5 minutes after 7 o'clock. So it sounds, listening to the news, like Governor Little has not quite buried the hatchet with his fellow Republicans who control both the House and Senate, primarily the House. 51. We're at 5 minutes after 7 o'clock. Do want to point out you're listening to News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com, and 96.1 FM. And Bill Colley with you until 10 o'clock today on Magic Valley this morning. We're going to spend some time chatting with State Representative Dorothy Moon. She is actually just back from legislative session. They wrapped up in the House on, I believe it was Wednesday evening, and she represents District 8, which is massive. It's a huge district that covers pretty much, well, I like to refer to them as the Central Highlands. Kind of gives it that Scottish flair, doesn't it? But she represents an area, a big mountainous part of Idaho, as well as some areas, too, down in the valleys, and joins us this morning from somewhere in the Chalice region, we'll call it, which is where she calls home. Welcome back to the program.
Well, thanks, Bill. Great to be on.
Yeah, and I mispronounced the name Chalice. Excuse me. Chalice is what you drink out of.
That's right. That's right. And I'm ready after this session, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to unpack here this morning. Certainly the dominant story, I think, throughout the session happened to be that relationship with the governor's office. And yet, some other issues did come along, too, as well, that obviously people, and we're still learning about some of it. I mean, I look at the AP wire every morning this week, and I see something new on the wire. And the complexity of it for most of we mere mortals, I think, if we're not there, it's a little difficult sometimes to understand just how much is actually going on. So what would you say was your list of highlights? What do you have?
Well, I think the highlights are that we did get the property tax. It's not the best bill. In fact, I didn't really support this one. I was supporting a different one that Representative Skog was bringing forward. He had about 70 sponsors, co-sponsors on it, but then at the last minute, a 26-page tax relief bill came forward, and the homeowner's exemption was only $25,000 increase. It needed to be more. We were going to have circuit breaker issues. It could possibly hurt circuit breaker for our seniors. The other one was just a clear-cut increase in the homeowner's exemption, which would have been great. And these property taxes are just killing people in everywhere now. First it was just the urban areas, but there's not one thing for sale in Old Chalice. I mean, literally everything is gone. Subdivisions that were prepared 10 years ago, every lot sold within a few weeks. And here it's been, sitting there for decades. It is amazing everywhere. The market is so tight.
Yeah, you bring up the fact that it's not the best bill, and I think sometimes publicly people don't understand that, that you're looking for a solution, and sometimes you have to get a partial solution, and then a year later, try to get the rest of it. Sometimes you can't grab everything in one bite because there are 105 of you between both houses, and it's a little like herding cats to try to get agreement on everything.
It is. No, it truly is. And the thing is, people just want to get their bills out there, and when there's a lot of support for a freshman legislator, I'll tell you, the freshmen have a hard time getting their bills through. And in the Senate especially, I guess they just want to see the tried and true senior legislators bring them forward. And it's kind of unfortunate because they have good bills too, and that's why they ran. So hopefully, this one will get tweaked, and I know that Representative Monks has brought that up, and that there will be some changes to it. But it's always hard to vote for a bill that if it isn't good, because a lot of times they don't go back and change them. And I'm saying this one has enough good that it's going to help some folks, but boy, we sure needed a lot more on that one. The other thing is that we did hold back some education bills in order to get the critical race theory addressed. And, what was interesting is everybody goes, what's critical race theory? What's critical race theory? In a lot of rural areas, but in the urban areas, it's already been coming through the schools already, and obviously in the universities as well, about white privilege, that you have to deny, you can't deny what happened in the past and reparations. It's just, it's for the minorities in the past, and it's just too much, and it more or less makes people just hate America. And I think that we've seen that with a lot of our college kids. They come out and now they're working against the entire Constitution and the entire American way of life, and I think we see that now, especially with people not wanting to go back to work. They don't want to go back to work because they're already getting used to these handouts or the unemployment. But luckily, the federal unemployment will be cut off by June 19th. So all of these help wanted signs hopefully will start disappearing.
You referenced the movement on critical race theory, and my view from here was that this was one of those few issues that really united various factions in the Republican caucus because it moved so quickly from morning hearings to votes in the afternoon in both houses.
Uh-huh.
And I can remember the one day I was watching session online, and I heard the comments from Bruce Skog about his daughter's situation at Boise State, and it was just I don't know how any parent out there could sit back and even that the folks at the universities and the public schools who are, they of course they think this is their money and not the taxpayers, but they had to be touched by that too. And I think that those types of stories and what we're hearing about how people with traditional values are treated in schools, it resonated.
You're right, and Representative Scogg's daughter's story. There were some tears in there. I mean, on the floor, people were really visibly upset, and you didn't know it was his daughter until the very end. And that wasn't the only story. I mean, I've been receiving stories for a few years now about how there's kids are being treated in the universities, and especially some of the materials, the indoctrination materials that are coming forward in a biology class or an engineering class. It's why are we talking about these things in these solid sciences type of class situations? And no, it's in every class, And I think Dr. Trump with BSU, when she came and spoke to the education committee, I don't know if she really knew how bad it was. When we asked to see those foundation class syllabi to, get an understanding of how many classes are pushing this type of agenda forward, we never got them. She said she'd have them to us within a week. Well, every month I was asking for our chairman to call her office and ask her where a synopsis of those syllabi are at, and we never got them. But I think she realized there was a problem, and they were, going to dedicate some staff to looking into it, but we'll see how far that goes.
I wanted to mention we're speaking this morning with State Representative Dorothy Moon from District 8 and talking about the recently concluded legislative session in Boise. It's 7:13, and we're at 51 on News Radio 1310 KLIX and 96.1 FM. And Bill Colley with you until 10 a.m. on Magic Valley this morning. Got about a minute before the break. Quickly, this is a very nimble period. Legislators could return very quickly if they needed to work on anything that, emergency-wise that might crop up the way that things concluded on Wednesday.
Yes, and we could because we recessed, the House recessed, and the Senate sine died, which means they've adjourned. They're gone. And then we can get into what actually happened mechanically with these bills when we come back. But yes, the Speaker of the House should some ARPA, some of the federal money come in, and we want to definitely appropriate it this go around, then we would have the ability to come back in, which would force the Senate to be up at the Capitol within 72 hours, 3 days, and then we get back to work. So now we will be the guiding hand on that in the House.
Got more coming up with State Representative Dorothy Moon. It's almost 7:15, the Ag Report and the weather coming along. 51. Do want to mention as well, the gun guys will join us just after 8 o'clock this morning. Todd Eccles, and Todd is with Patriot Defense, of course, and works on training issues, and we'll have Forrest Anderson, too, from Washington Street Pawn. They'll be answering all of your questions on all things firearms. That's on the way. State Representative Dorothy Moon joining us this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com, and 96.1 FM. Bill Colley as well. on Magic Valley this morning at 7:22. We're at 50. I have a message. Coach Pete Colson, by the way, says, "Good morning, Dorothy," and he thanks you for your passion, and especially when it comes to our freedoms. So some folks are listening to us, at least one I know of this morning.
Oh, I love Coach Colson. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Happy day. Happy day because I'm home and everybody's home this morning listening to your radio station.
Hey, we were talking off air. There's been a move by the governor's office because, well, obviously, I don't think anybody can sit back and say the last 14 months have been a picnic. It's been very difficult for people in all walks of life with the so-called pandemic that came along. And the governor is looking to provide, I guess, a reward or relief to some of those who are involved.
Right, right. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. We had two emails sent to us from the governor's office yesterday, and one of them was more or less, his review of what has happened in the legislature, and we can talk about that in a minute. But the other one that kind of got me was he was going to give $1,000 to each of the ISP officers for all of their hard work and dedication, which is true. They do work hard and they are dedicated. But this is kind of following Governor DeSantis of Florida. He's fantastic. I mean, Governor DeSantis is definitely leading the way for conservatism in a state, and he passed. He is more or less giving out $1,000 to every emergency responder, and we're talking police, we're talking EMTs, we're talking paramedics. We're talking to people who are on the front lines who have been, picking up folks and getting them to medical services, and not just one branch of emergency service. So I'm kind of surprised. Now, where I live, I've got people who like to come out here in the summer and recreate and do crazy things like rappel off of mountains, and then they get stuck or on a rock ledge somewhere, and then the EMT services, they have to go get them, go save them, or if they broke their leg, they have to hike in there and find them. So those are people too. I think they deserve $1,000 each if you're handing out money. But I was just kind of surprised because Governor DeSantis did that. I guess it was 9 days ago, and it was yesterday that our governor decided to give ISP only the $1,000 bonus. And there's some people who have worked incredibly hard during this entire past year.
You said he got in touch with you as legislators and has his own review of the session. Is it positive?
Well, it wasn't just us. Well, no, not really. He said there was some good and some bad. He threw a lot of flowers over the Senate, but as far as the House, it wasn't as kindly. But you have to remember that most of the governors traditionally have come out of the Senate side because they've either moved up as a House or Senate member, then they become leadership, and then if they're in the Senate side, then they wind up becoming lieutenant governors, generally the transition, and eventually run for governor. So there's a much tighter relationship between the Senate and the governor, and that's where I think we have some of these separation of powers issues, and that's why so many separation of powers bills were brought forward. We are supposed to be working for the people, and sometimes legislators are working directly with the governor, and that's reflective in the fact that many of the good bills, really good bills that went through the House and through the process, through all the committees, they get over to the Senate and they're immediately put into a drawer. Now, why would they be put in a drawer is because somebody doesn't want them to get to the governor's desk, because then if you have to veto them, that doesn't look good. And then if there's a veto override, that doesn't look good for the man in charge.
We had a bill that was finally crafted, and we talked earlier about how sometimes you have compromises, and it appears that there was a watered down. I was told, in fact, the phrase I heard was a very watered down bill in the Senate when it came to the governor's emergency powers. But he appears to have agreed with that. So at least there's been some give, apparently, on his part when it comes to, working with the legislature a little more closely.
Well, I don't know, Bill. Here we had all of these emergency power bills come up, and a lot of testimony on them, a lot of heartfelt testimony, kind of like on the critical race theory. And then what happens is it gets over to the other side, and either they want to change it, they amend it, and then it's really morphed into something else, and then it has to come back over to the House, and then either we reject it or it just doesn't even get back or get heard. So yeah, the process seems to we're not working tightly as a legislature, and that's, I think, is where the citizens have really suffered. I think they are not getting their issues addressed, a lot of their issues addressed, and we're not taking control of where the power really needs to be. The legislature really has the most power of the three branches, and we're just not functioning properly to do the best work for the people. And it's hard when you come up and you've got almost 5 months of your life that's been going back and forth to the Capitol when it's supposed to be 3 months, because there were some major issues to be addressed here. We have an administration in the presidency that is not looking out for the citizens of this country. And when we have critical race theory being demanded in schools, money being doled out so people don't go back to work, we see our entire capitalist form of economy being thrown out the window for something more socialist, and we're not acting like a sovereign state. We have a problem. We, as one of the most conservative states, reflective in the fact that 69%, the highest in the country, voted for President Trump, and we do have a very conservative state, is the first one to ban, put out an emergency order to restrict activities of our citizens. We've lost our freedoms. We have to get them back, and it's the legislators' purview to do this. And the thing is that if we can't get this done, which we didn't in a lot of areas, we're in a lot of trouble. We're in a lot of trouble, especially in the next 3 years of this current national administration.
Can you stick around? I've got a break for news at 7:30, but I didn't bother to ask you yesterday when I called how much time you might have this morning. But if you could stick around, we could bring up a few other points too as well.
I would love to. That'd be great.
State Representative Dorothy Moon joining us this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com, and 96.1 FM. We're at 52. It's almost 7:30, and that means news coming up, a local update from our own Benito Baeza. And we've got the gun guys at 8 o'clock this morning, Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pawn, Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. They'll be talking all things firearms, and also they're available to answer any of your questions that you may have. Bill Colley with you until 10 a.m. on Magic Valley this morning. State Representative Dorothy Moon joining us. She represents District 8, which geographically one of the largest districts in the state of Idaho. 7:35, it is 50. Bill Colley, too, on News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com, and 96.1 FM. I've got a question from a listener in Gooding, and we'll get to that in just a short while. But the representative wanted to follow up with us this morning, and apparently we were talking about the governor's reaction to legislative session, and he is just apparently like an angry parent, disappointed in many of you.
Gosh darn it, Bill, he is, and I don't know why. He's not happy that the session went long. None of us want to be full-time legislators. That's why the part-time legislator position appeals to most of us. But when you have the issues that we're dealing with, again, losing constitutional freedoms, our kids have lost a full year of education because they couldn't figure out how to get kids back in school this fall, in what type of scenario, hybrid, all online, or what have you, totally masked up and face shields on. There were a lot of serious issues, and then all this federal money flowing into this state, which we do not need because we already have a $650 million surplus, could take care of everything. We have people moving in from all over the place paying taxes. We didn't need the money. We have a lot of big issues, and again, the state sovereignty issue, it was paramount with most of us. So if we have to stay and keep wrangling it out and trying to get good bills across the rotunda and to his desk, then by golly, we need to stay there.
I had a note came in from someone listening in Gooding County, and they said, how come the taxpayers themselves don't get an option in deciding to fund, a reward for first responders, or at least a little extra for first responders? And he said that this would be good for the people and train the politicians.
Hey, I agree. I remember when I worked in the city of Springfield, Missouri, and they would come and say, "Well, we're taking some of your money to give to this organization, and then they're going to find all these organizations to give to." No, I will take my money, my hard-earned money, or my hard-earned tax dollars, and give it to whatever organization I want. I agree wholeheartedly, and this was not something that was even brought before the legislature. This is something by executive order again.
Here's another question from someone listening in Twin Falls. How is the discussion going with bringing on the greater Idaho? I think that our neighbors in Oregon and some counties are having a vote on that any day now, right?
Yes, and I know there was a big presentation in the Lincoln Auditorium, and I guess at this year I did not go to it because I had a conflict. But in during this year, past year as well, we have so many issues we need to deal with as a state. And I know they can either all move over here, or and we're talking about more of the rural areas to make Greater Idaho. But I don't think it's really something that's going to fly with most Idahoans. And I know they're refugees, and they're looking for something better than what they have in their state. But we've got to get our state in order first before we even entertain anything like that.
Yeah, the odds are stacked obviously against it, even though probably the odds are better now than they were 20 years ago. It would
Right.
still be very much a long shot of that ever happening.
Mhm.
And then I've got a note from Smitty, who's listening in Jerome, and says, Dorothy Moon, a sincere thank you for everything you do for the people of Idaho and for our country. And says, you are a patriot, and we thank you. Keep up the great work.
Oh, thank you, Smitty. You have no idea how many hate emails I get when I get nice comments. That really makes my heart swell. It really does.
I was going to
I
say,
do appreciate it.
that could go on a campaign poster.
It should. It should.
Well, there's another question. You mentioned how people move up in government in this state.
Mhm.
And I've been seeing lots of. We're going to have a candidate who plans to primary the governor. Ed Humphreys is going to join us next Wednesday on the air, and he's, I think, the first person who's announced in that particular race. But there's a lot of I read some of the comments online, and there are a lot of people who are urging you, perhaps, at some point, maybe not right away, but at some point, uh, to seek higher office. Is that in your interest at the moment?
You know, Bill, God told me to run for this seat. I had no intention to run for a legislator 5 years ago. Someone else was going to do it, but I was literally sitting in my office, and it was like a lightning bolt hit me. And I looked over at Dar, and I said, Dar, I'm supposed to run for the House seat. And he said, what? I thought someone else was. And I said, no, I am supposed to run for this House seat. And it just started from that moment. I pray on what to do. I know that our state is on a precipice, and I know there's a reason why people love Idaho, and the people here are great. And a lot of the refugees coming here are very conservative, and that's why they've left the state they left. But I guess you do work hard, and you start seeing how the machine works, and you know where some of the cogs are at that might need to be replaced. So I don't know what my future holds, but I do love the people. I love being out among the people. If I could just go around to the coffee groups and meet with my senior citizens at lunch every day that they meet, boy, I'd be in heaven. But and take care of their issues from home. But the legislation is important, and that is what drives everything. So we'll see, Bill. I don't know. I guess I'm not too old yet. I'm not quite at retirement age, but it is a tough job. It's rewarding when you can help a veteran get some new teeth that he hasn't had for a long time because he couldn't get to the VA hospital, but you could get it taken care of locally. It's these little victories that really do make me feel fulfilled and brings joy to my life to help people. The thing is that we have to keep our eye on the people, and I really do. Most of us do really care about them, and they're front and center. And when we can't help them, it's disheartening. It hurts. It's like not being able to help your own kid. So It's a grueling job, and believe me, it's like having a baby. After you have a baby, you're not going to have another one. You swear you'll never have another one. Then you kind of forget. Then you go ahead and have another one. That's kind of like working in the legislature. When you're talking to me at the wrong time, but when you come out of it, oh, you go, why in the world was I up there for 5.5, almost 5 months? And then you think, no, then it comes back to reasoning when you start seeing the folks over the next few months of why you do it.
And then I got Lyle and Brian both chime in this morning online and pretty much echo what Smitty had to say about your work. Well, a lot of people are talking about changing offices, and I had heard about this, and I was sworn to secrecy. And sometimes, you think, okay, I could mention that I heard this, and I get maybe a week's worth of, oh, you were really on top of that, and then 6 months later everybody forgets. But then I kept it a secret for about a month, and then my counterpart Kevin Miller up in Boise, he broke the news after hearing it from several sources that Mr. Bedke may be running for lieutenant governor, and so there's a lot of people looking. The chess pieces are moving all over the board right now when it comes to 2022.
You're right. It's going to be a very, very exciting year. We've got the census data coming out, which is going to redistrict a lot of our districts. And so it's going to be September because they haven't quite compiled it yet. And then, let's say in my county, I go all the way across the state, almost to Oregon from Montana. They might take off Valley and Gem County and stick Blaine County up with me, or they might put Blaine County down in Representative Blanksman's area. But one thing they have to do on the redistricting is make sure that philosophically most of those folks are the same. So when I represent rural Idaho, I am representing the loggers, the ranchers, and the miners, the hardworking, in the dirt people who are always outside in this grueling weather doing what they do best. And then if you go and put in something like a Blaine County, wow, it really changes the dynamic. So we don't know what's going to happen, and the powers that be who make those decisions and change the map may not be as friendly to some legislators as we would hope they would be. So, we could have a total shakeup. And it's amazing, a lot of us could maybe seek higher office for the fact we want to continue to serve, but we may not be able to, actually encompass a huge population that is totally a 180 from philosophical and political belief.
Well, if you can hold on, we'll pick this up after the Rush Morning Update.
Okay, great. Thank you.
State Representative Dorothy Moon joining us this morning at 7:45. Bill Colley as well on News Radio 1310. KLIX, newsradio1310.com, and Magic Valley this morning, of course, is now heard on 96.1 FM. State Representative Dorothy Moon, we only have her for just a few more minutes, but we were talking off air, and there's a couple of big issues, and they really deal with Idaho's. We sit atop a trove of minerals that are beneath the ground, metals and minerals that the world increasingly needs, and it's very difficult to get them out. 7:52, we're at 53. She and her husband both are geologists, we should point out, and they own a mine themselves. We just jumped to 56. It's 7:53. Bill Colley as well on News Radio 1310, KLIX and 96.1 FM. And hey, right off the beginning, we were just talking off air. There had been a bill proposed to have Idaho set aside some. I guess this would be a hedge against what could become some pretty nasty stagflation on the way. Idaho could set aside some precious metals on its own and use that as a way to protect ourselves from what might be on the way. And that attempt failed, didn't it?
Yes, it was one of our first bills, and it passed overwhelmingly in the House and got held in the State Affairs Committee, and that would have put some of our state funds in gold and silver. So instead of paper, we have something that's really going to back our economy in bad times. And I'll tell you what, I know a lot of people were buying a lot of junk silver, the old coins, and they've got them all over the place. And I mean, there was a big run. There's some places that actually sell gold and silver bars, and up in Eagle, a great spot, and big distributory there, and they have, sold a lot. People are really hedging against inflation by buying gold and silver, and that I'm not giving anybody advice, but I know just by the trends in that market alone, we're in for some bad times coming up.
Mr. Biden is actually talking, I read this a couple of days ago, talking about limiting mining in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, and Nevada, because he said we need to protect the sage grouse. So he's looking to constrain those industries.
Well, and now that's no surprise. With his Green New Deal, he's going to shut down anything that's going to be beneficial to man. And a lot of these items, as you were saying, the rare earth minerals that we have and metals that we have, cobalt being one of the main ones in our cell phone, in our iPads and computers, in our cars, electric cars. That cobalt is needed, and Salmon has the largest reserve in the world next to the Congo, who uses slave labor to extract it and then send it off to China. And we have an Australian company, Jervois, who has that mine currently and has been to D.C. numerous times, I think even with the new administration, on the importance of getting this mine open. It's been under consideration for permitting now for 12 years. Absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah, if you're going to have a green economy, you need these rare earth minerals. In Idaho, I saw a map, and Idaho is one of the leaders in North America with these things beneath the ground. But there was even a federal study that was done by some federal department that said the goals that they have can't be met. They just simply don't have enough of these metals and minerals available. And so they're kind of cutting off their noses to spite their own faces.
Well, and that's exactly what we did when Congressman Simpson locked up the Boulder White Clouds. That is one of the richest areas in this entire state, and we have totally locked up that opportunity for Idaho and for the United States.
You use the word Simpson. I'll tell you what, normally we don't allow language like that on the radio.
I know. I almost said his first name with it as well.
Hey, I got about 2 minutes to go. Anything we didn't mention that you think would be important, at least to leave with today?
Well, despite what is being said out there, we had 70 extremely dedicated House members, and even the Democrats too. I voted with them on a few bills that I agreed with them on, especially with some of the brains over there and some of the legal minds over there. They made good sense and testimony. But the thing is that these people gave up their lives to be up there to represent their folks. And no matter if you're Democrat or independent or whatever they are up there, mainly Republican, they do it with all of the best intentions. And so, when the executive branch doesn't appreciate that, we hope the people still do, because it's hard to be away from your husband or your children or your pets even. My dog has got PTSD because I've been gone so long, and I mean he just goes nuts when I come in. It's just really sad. I wish I could. I'm going to start taking him to the Capitol with me for my service dog. No, I wouldn't do that, but I'm just saying I do miss him a lot too. I mean he calms me down a lot, and it is pretty. It is a pretty big, amount of dedication to help help the state government along. And I just hope people understand that and not listen to some of this. Oh, they went too long, or they only do it for the money. I am telling you, $17,000 a year is nothing to what most of the folks in the legislature could make out in the job market, and that's that's really offensive when people say that. But anyway, we're there for the right reasons.
We'll talk again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Bill, and we will.
All right, State Representative Dorothy Moon joining us this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com, and 96.1 FM. The Gun Guy's on the way in just a few minutes. Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pawn, Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense, and, of course, they can answer questions on all things firearms. Bill Colley with you as well on Magic Valley this morning until 10 a.m.